What is going on, you guys? This is Erica's for the Win, and I have had the privilege of playing and beating Mortal Shell this past weekend. This is a game developed by Symmetry and published by Playstack, so I want to thank them for my opportunity. There's a lot to talk about with this game, you guys, and I wanted to make a video just to kind of go through different details about Mortal Shell and how it compares to your traditional Soulsborne. So Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and even other Soulsborne like Neo, for example. Those games we've played, right? If you're a Soulsborne head, you have your experience, and if not, maybe you're new, you would find this video helpful as well. I just wanted to go through some things that are similar and different about Mortal Shell. So let's just get right to it. The big question you probably have right off the bat is how much like Dark Souls is Mortal Shell? And there's a lot that's very, very similar. But it does do things differently, such as the different shells that you possess and the abilities that come with them. Hardening your shell is a core part of the game in which you hit L2 and harden in order to block attacks. It does have a cooldown though, so you can't just spam it. You have to really kind of strategize when you're going to use it. And it really comes in handy as far as being your shield in the game, gets you out of tight situations. It is in the name, Mortal Shell. It is the focus, and it's what stands out and makes this game different. The button layout outside of hardening with L2 is very Soulsborne. R1 is light attack, R2 is heavy attack, circle or B is dodge, roll, and run. L3 is also run, and then there's R3 for lock on. L1 is parry. So yeah, there's a lot of familiarity here. Feels right at home as far as the controller layout and the combat system. Something very unique though about the combat is the parry system in Mortal Shell, because it's connected to this item called the Tarnished Seal, and it has its own meter. So when you fill up a bar in the meter, that means you have a parry ready, and if successful, you will gain health back. You can fill bars in your meter by attacking enemies in quick succession or by successfully parrying on its own. When you parry without a full bar, you will stagger the enemy, but when a bar is full, it leads to this punishing attack that's highlighted in a red circle, much like the death blow in Sekiro. Very, very similar. And then when you follow up with R1 after that, it's a devastating attack to the enemy, and that's when you get your health back. The Tarnished Seal will also glow and flash red when an enemy is about to attack you with a move that is unparryable. So it's like a warning to not parry, and you'll have to dodge or roll instead. It's pretty interesting how it works. I've found that sometimes it can be inconsistent, and this isn't really a review video, but I wanted to let you guys know that it takes some trial and error to kind of really understand this whole parry system. But it's very unique, it's different, and I think it's what really adds to Mortal Shell having differences in its play style. Besides the parry system, combat is pretty standard with the Soulsborne code. You can fall off ledges and land with an attack. You can run and jump with a heavy attack. And the hardening ability acts as a shield with cooldown. So you can play your game as if it's Soulsborne standard, but just you have to kind of pick and choose when you're going to use that shell. So it adds a different dynamic to the combat, makes it feel fresh and different. And yeah, but besides that, other than that, the combat feels very familiar. And if you do have experience in Soulsborne games, you will feel at home, most likely. There's definitely some ways to bend the rules as well, much like any other Soulsborne. I noticed a few tricks as I was playing through the game. One, for example, that I saw immediately is that I was able to swing my sword through walls. And, you know, the clipping is real, but it was really nothing to get upset about because that helped me cheese some of these enemies. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. So yeah, little tricks like that. Even when you're in trouble, you can definitely run away. I even tested it where I was able to run out of trouble and get to the woman where I'm able to save the game. I was able to save it on the fly, even though enemies were chasing me. So yeah, there's little familiar tricks like that that you can use in order to survive, basically. And speaking of the woman that allows you to save the game, think of her as the doll in Bloodborne, or the other woman that's in the Dark Souls series, or the shrines in Neo, where you do save the game there, much like a bonfire, but you can also upgrade your abilities of your shells there as well. And she's placed in really convenient spots for the players, for instance, next to boss fights and at the beginning of areas. It was never really a point in the game where I felt like I was running for my life and desperately trying to find her. She was always conveniently placed in good areas. And that's a really good thing because there's no fast travel in the game. All right, no fast travel. So it's like you're naturally just progressing through this world, finding her upon new areas and but next to boss fights. So it works out pretty well. And also this world is really connected. I'll get into that in a second. But staying on the topic of the woman and how you're able to save and upgrade, it's not a traditional level system to where you're putting in points to strength and stamina and weight management and stuff like that. No fat roll or anything. It's not like that. It's basically your different shells and they each have different abilities. For example, one of the shells focuses on stamina, another one focuses on strength, and you have more HP. So it just depends which one you have and which one you want to upgrade, and you could do this by speaking with the woman in the game. And I gotta say, one of the most satisfying things in the game is actually acquiring a new shell and seeing that skill tree pop. Yeah, that was definitely one of the cool things about Mortal Shell is that skill tree. As far as weapons go, there's a few different weapons that you will acquire, and you do this by accessing the book that is near the woman at the beginning of the area. You will recite, and then it puts you into a boss battle with the Hattern, I believe he's called. It's basically a human-like enemy or a boss fight that you have to fight and defeat, and when you do defeat them, they give you a new weapon. So I thought that was really cool. It felt like a trial. It was like somewhere I could test my skills. And if I was worthy enough, then I would get that new weapon. So I did like that about the game. That was something different. And when you do have multiple weapons, you can switch them out with an item or at the Fallgrim Outskirts Tower where all the items and shells are available. And speaking of the Fallgrim Outskirts, if you did play the beta, you're familiar with this area, but you're really going to see this area quite a bit in the main game, as it is the central area that connects the world through tunnels and doorways that you will have to find to progress. So if you're into the world connecting, much like Dark Souls, this one isn't as complex, but it does exist, and it's done in a simplistic way that's very easy to follow. I wasn't really lost or anything like that. I felt like when I was exploring through these Fallgrim Outskirts that I was able to find something new pretty much every time. So it's very satisfying, and it's also a good area to farm if you need to. As for shortcuts, there's not a lot of them in the game, but there are a few, and they come in the form of elevators and doorways, and they're kind of placed naturally throughout the world. It's not like you have to activate shortcuts in order to have a shorter distance to get to your boss attempt. You know, in Dark Souls where you die, and then you respawn at a bonfire, and then you have to run through hell at times just to get back to the boss fight where it kind of kills your momentum. You don't have to worry about that here. Like I said with the woman character where you're able to save it, as long as you do that next to the boss fight, you'll respawn right there and get back into the action. And speaking of respawning, you do lose your shell upon your first death. If your first health meter runs out, you will lose your shell, and with a tiny bit of health, you'll be able to pick it back up. If you don't and you get hit, then you will die. So essentially, you kind of have a second life, much like Sekiro. It's like you have the second chance to get back into the action, and then when you die again after picking up the shell, then you're dead, and you'll have to respawn at your last save. When you do come back, though, to the area after you have died, you will see your former shell there in the area. So you can pick it back up to get your health back. But the trick I found, and I'm sure you could think of it yourself too, is that you don't necessarily have to pick it up right away. You can let it sit there, and then as you're fighting a boss, for example, and you start to take some damage, then you can go ahead and pick it back up because then you'll get your full health back. So essentially, you can pretty much have 3 health refills if you play it right. And that's very different from a traditional Soulsborne where, you have your one life and you're just popping Estus flasks and blood vials, just to stay alive. This game doesn't have that. It's more of, using your shells and kind of strategizing how you're going to use that little, extra life and doing what you can with the health you got. There are consumable items to heal yourself, but as far as one that refills, no, you don't have that in this game. The items that you find around the world do require familiarity, so when you do pick up a new item, you have to use it in order to know what it does. These items, they include the health regens, like I said, items that buff your shell, or even your stamina, you have buffs for that, and then there's items even that offer perks to successful parries, things like that. So it's pretty interesting and fun to kind of pick those up and figure out what they do. Currency in the game comes in two ways, tar and glimpses. You will need both in order to upgrade your shell abilities. Tar is much like souls or blood echoes in which you accumulate as you kill enemies. Upon death, you will lose them until you go pick them up again. You can also find big amounts of tar as item drops as well. Glimpses, on the other hand, you don't lose them when you die. You can find these as item drops as well. Much like the souls of the lost undead in Dark Souls, you can pop these glimpses for different amounts. They kind of reminded me of Insight from Bloodborne, just because of like the description and kind of how it looks, and you find them on like dead bodies and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool, and it was something different, but kind of familiar at the same time. But as far as anything else goes, you guys, that's pretty much all the notes I have and the things I wanted to share. I do want to leave some mystery in here as far as bosses and things like that. I don't want to give it all away, because if you are going to play the game, I want you to see for yourself what's similar, what's different, and all that. But until then, I do have a couple questions I wanted to answer. Thank you to Jay from Twitter. I took to Twitter to ask everyone if they had some questions, and Jay came through. So I'm going to go ahead and read and answer these to close the video. First question is, will there be trophy support, such as a platinum on PS4? Yes, as far as I know, PS4, Xbox, you're going to have trophies and achievements. Not sure about the platinum, but I would assume. I'm playing this game on Epic, and there was no achievements because, it's Epic. I don't know if they're coming later, but I did find out that for Steam, when this game comes to Steam next year, there will be achievements there. Next question is, does the game mechanics include stances like Neo? No, no stances. Again, it's just the shells and the different abilities that you have with the shells, and basically using the shell as a shield and kind of working your way through these enemies using that. It's very, I guess, basic, if you want to say. There's no stances or nothing. There's no skill trees under stances, and it's not very complex when it comes to combat and skill trees and all that. The next question is, who is this game for? So is it for Soulsborne fans? Is it for people looking to try out Souls type of games, or a wider audience? This game is definitely for Soulsborne fans, for sure. I think a lot of them will be happy with this game. People looking to try out Souls type, yeah, I would say this is a good pick. It's shorter than a Dark Souls game. It's not gonna feel bloated or feel like it overstays its welcome. I think it's a tight little package for those who want to try out Souls. I would say do it with this game. This type of formula, just to get a taste of it, for sure, I would recommend it. But as far as a wider audience, I'm not so sure. I don't think so. But that's just because it's Soulsborne, it's not for everyone. And that's every game, it's not for everyone. But on a wider scale, I think Soulsborne is really not for everyone. There's a lot of people, a lot of casual gamers out there, and people who just don't have the time or the patience. They just don't like these games, and that's okay. But as far as the rest of us, the ones who are interested in this type of genre, and if we've, have experience with Soulsborne, yeah, this game is definitely for us. And I think those who do have experience with this formula will find this game to be refreshing and like it is something that feels a bit different. The last question is, what makes this game stand out? That's a good question. Okay, so for sure, the shell, I think, is going to stand out. I mean, it's in the name. It is all about hardening your shell, using it as a shield and just implementing it in your combat, I think makes the game unique, and it's going to stand out for that. The parry system, I think, can stand out as well. The environments are really impressive in this game. And just knowing that only 15 people created this game is impressive on itself. Like that alone, I think, makes the game stand out because, you know, a couple clipping issues aside and the sword going through walls and stuff like that, which could be intentional, by the way. Besides that, and like maybe a few audio issues, the polish in this game is impressive. And it's because it was a small team that did it. It's almost hard to believe. And I really do mean that. Like if you guys get your hands on this game, know that 15 people made it. And that I think alone could make this stand out. As far as anything else, I mean, the combat, like I said, it's very Soulsborne-ish. It's very familiar in a lot of ways. So it might get overlooked a little bit, but that shell, I think, is the one thing that's, of course, going to stand out. Just the whole tone of the game. The music, I think, won't. That's one thing I'm going to say right now. I mean, there's not a lot of different music going on, but as far as the environments and the different enemy types, the bosses, I think the design of some of these bosses will stand out. But yeah, that's pretty much it, you guys. Thank you so much for the questions, Jay. I appreciate it. I wish I got a bit more, but it's all good. I appreciate you guys taking interest in my content for this and watching this video. It really is appreciated. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section. And if you're playing Mortal Shell, let me know that too, all right? Until my next video, you guys take care, and I will talk to you later. Peace.